Hi, and thanks for watching this message video, and don't forget to go through the life lesson that goes with it. And for those who can't make a Sunday, don't forget that there's a podcast of that sermon that goes along with this message video and life lesson. Today we're continuing on in our series called What the What, where we're looking at all of these different stories in the Bible and learning from them that even when things don't make sense, we can still trust God. And today we're covering the story of Lazarus, who was a very good friend of Jesus. And Lazarus, if you maybe know him, had two sisters, Mary and Martha. And the reason why Jesus and the disciples spent a lot of time with them was because they all lived in Bethany, which was just a short walk away from Jerusalem. Now, this whole story where Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead happened just a short time before Jesus himself was crucified and then risen from the dead. And so when it came to this period of time, all of the leaders in Jerusalem did not want Jesus alive, and so they were looking for him. But Jesus and his disciples weren't in Jerusalem at this time, yet they received a message from the sisters, Mary and Martha, about Lazarus' poor health, and this is how Jesus responded. John 11, 1 through 4. A man named Lazarus was sick. He lived in Bethany with his sisters, Mary and Martha. This is the Mary who later poured the expensive perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped them with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was sick, so the two sisters sent a message to Jesus telling him, "Lord, your dear friend is very sick." But when Jesus heard about it, he said, "Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God, so that the Son of God will receive glory from this." From the way Jesus responded, it would have been very easy for the disciples to assume that this wasn't a big deal. Therefore, there's no real reason for us to head back to Bethany and put Jesus in harm's way or us in harm's way. And so, yeah, let's just chill. Let's just do our thing. However, a couple of days later, Jesus says this. John 11, 5 through 16. So although Jesus loved Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, he stayed where he was for the next 2 days. Finally, he said to his disciples, "Let's go back to Judea." But his disciples objected. "Rabbi," they said, "only a few days ago the people in Judea were trying to stone you. Are you going there again?" Jesus replied, "There are 12 hours of daylight every day. During the day people can walk safely. They can see because they have the light of this world. But at night there is danger of stumbling because they have no light." Then he said, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but now I will go and wake him up." The disciples said, "Lord, if he is sleeping, he will soon get better." They thought Jesus meant Lazarus was simply sleeping, but Jesus meant Lazarus had died. So he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead, and for your sakes, I'm glad I wasn't there, for now you will really believe. Come, let's go see him." Thomas, nicknamed the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let's go too and die with Jesus." If you and I were one of Jesus' disciples back then, I'm pretty sure that this would have caused some serious what the what moments for many of us. And some questions would have popped up that would have needed answered. For instance, like, why all the secrecy? Why are you so dodgy with all? Why did you just say that he was dying and that he was going? And if he's dead, why go back? Why put everybody in harm's way? Why go see him? And probably the most important question is, why would you think that in any way, shape, or form letting him die would be good for us or for Mary or Martha? What the what? But rather than answering any of those questions, Jesus simply just took them back to the Judea area or Bethany, and then this happened. John 11, 17 through 21. When Jesus arrived at Bethany, he was told that Lazarus had already been in his grave for 4 days. Bethany was only a few miles down the road from Jerusalem, and many of the people had come to console Martha and Mary in their loss. When Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary stayed in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died." Similar to the what moments that the disciples faced and that Martha faced. Many of the what moments we'll face will leave us feeling confused and possibly misled at first, but this is how our faith develops. And in this situation, Jesus clearly knew that every single one of his disciples and all of his followers were still struggling when it came to not only faith in him as the Messiah, having power over death, but they were still struggling with the whole idea of what it really meant to give up their lives, to, in a figurative way, allow their own lives to die so that a new life could begin. And Jesus knew this again. And so this whole situation was an entire setup. And so this is what happened next. John 11:23 through 35. Jesus told her, "Your brother will rise again." "Yes," Martha said. "He will rise when everyone else rises at the last day." Jesus told her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live, even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this, Martha?" "Yes, Lord," she told him. "I have always believed you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who has come into the world from God." Then she returned to Mary. She called Mary aside from the mourners and told her, "The teacher is here and wants to see you." So Mary immediately went to him. Jesus had stayed outside the village at the place where Martha met him. When the people who were at the house consoling Mary saw her leave so hastily, they assumed she was going to Lazarus' grave to weep, so they followed her there. When Mary arrived and saw Jesus, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, a deep anger welled up within him, and he was deeply troubled. "Where have you put him?" he asked them. They told him, "Lord, come see." Then Jesus wept. From a human perspective, and that's just it, it's easy to blame God and criticize him for the deaths of anybody, whether it's a kid or a mom or a dad or a brother, it doesn't matter. And when we do this, we blame God long enough, it affects our willingness to be associated with him. And what will evaporate eventually is any identity with him at all, or any attempt to have an identity with him at all in front of others. And so one of the things that we all need to learn from this situation in terms of perspective, a human perspective, is that when it comes to the lives or deaths of our loved ones, God wants us to see everyone and everything from his perspective. The reason being, when our view is limited from the earthbound perspective, the human observer, we will always end up blaming God for disrupting what we perceive to be as a much better plan. Even if we don't think it's necessarily our plan, we just think that, well, if we were in control, there would be a better way of handling everything. And so the idea of it is we begin to criticize God and blame God. And the reason, again, is because we are looking at things simply from a human perspective. But what Jesus has always wanted, and this whole time, what he's been trying to do with all of these disciples and all of the followers is to get them to look at life and death from a completely different perspective, from a heavenly perspective, or for God's perspective. And so this whole thing was a setup, which is why he went and did this. John 11:36 through 44. The people who were standing nearby said, "See how much he loved him." But some said, "This man healed a blind man. Couldn't he have kept Lazarus from dying?" Jesus was still angry as he arrived at the tomb, a cave with a stone rolled across its entrance. "Roll the stone aside," Jesus told them. But Martha, the dead man's sister, protested. "Lord, he has been dead for 4 days. The smell will be terrible." Jesus responded, "Didn't I tell you that you would see God's glory if you believe?" So they rolled the stone aside. Then Jesus looked up to heaven and said, "Father, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me. But I said it out loud for the sake of all these people standing here so that they will believe you sent me." Then Jesus shouted, "Lazarus, come out!" And the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound in grave clothes, his face wrapped in a headcloth. Jesus told them, "Unwrap him and let him go." Many of us, as followers of Christ, have an underlying thought, an underlying belief that God's ultimate purpose is to sustain our lives healthily for as long as possible, and to protect us, and to bless us, not to mention our moms or dads and family, kids, siblings, whatever. And when this doesn't happen, I speak from experience, there are many of us who not only not only do we bail on God, but eventually this blame that we have of him turns into something that becomes more like a hatred, and we work against him rather than for him. This is not what Christ wanted from any of his followers. Doesn't matter who they are, whether it was them or us now. And so this whole situation with Lazarus, with his close friend and friends, was a setup to help everybody understand. You guys are all looking at death a different way. You're only looking at it from a way that a human will look at it. And you can't do that. When you do that, and that's all you ever do, all you'll ever do is protect your life rather than surrender it, rather than giving it up. This is the very thing that Jesus needed all of them to do, because in a short time after this, he was going to demonstrate for them in the most ultimate what way. Guys, death is not what you think. I have power over it. And he's already demonstrated it in multiple ways. But this is what I'm going to be talking about more on Sunday. And I hope you can join me.